Cool.
but appreciate you being here. It'll be fun.
Yep.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's The Hours. I'm so pumped up to have a friend on that I have respected in the basketball world for many years, have learned a lot from, and continue to learn from. So, Mark, welcome, and I appreciate you investing the time and coaches.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I share the same sentiments with you. So I've enjoyed all of your stuff. We have spoke at a couple clinics, not really together, but we were guest speakers together, and super impressed by your presentation. My dog is here with us, but so yeah, excited to be here and
Thank
share.
you. No, I appreciate it. I remember actually I watched you at the Hoosier Clinic a few years ago. You presented like a day before me, I think. And like I saw you do at the Bob Jones Clinic this year, I just riffed off of what you had already built with the players, because it's so complementary and just in line with teaching principles of the game instead of procedures. So, yeah, big snaps to you. I'm excited for you to add value to the coaches that'll be watching here, and I'm excited to learn from you today as well. So, let's go ahead and dive in. So, as always, squad, we're gonna start off with a little 1-3-1 action, and I'm excited for Mark to chime in on this thing. So, as you go into your preseason, the greatest reminder that I can give you is to make sure that you're remembering your why. And I'll throw this in. We just got some new savvy coaching hats in. You can get yours in our online store if you want. But the tree is really symbolic, and I'm going to take you through the 4 steps of this. And then, Mark, I'm excited to see how you've done this or something different with your teams. So, the roots of any great program or really any great coach is remembering your why. Why are you coaching? We always get confused and led astray when we focus on the fruit and forget about the root. And the fruit is winning, and the fruit is seeing a play that we drew up work, or the fruit is getting a recruit. Like, this is all fruit. And if we chase the fruit, eventually we're going to wither and die, and the tree won't be strong enough to withstand the storms that are going to inevitably come. And so, my greatest encouragement to you in this preseason is you're getting excited about what you can do on offense and defense and what players you can put in what spots. And you're getting pumped up in your practice planning is do not neglect to remember your why. And you need to be deeply rooted in your why. My wife and I were actually talking about this last night for our family as we feel like, as we're pregnant with our fourth and life has been getting busy, we feel like our family and our home has been a little bit in disarray. And so last night we just had a little connect time before we went to sleep. I was like, okay, what is our why? What are we rooted in as a family? And it was really, really good. For us, it is to glorify God and to build the kingdom through our children. Like that, that's why we're doing it. So, okay, why are we chasing around, all these activities? Why are we trying to, you know, build this thing outside our house? Like, no, 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 that's not our why. Let's reprioritize. It took me a long time, but I'll speed up, Mark, because I do want to hear your thoughts. All right, so that's the root. Now, out of that root, we grow our standards, and our standards are the trunk, and the trunk needs to be strong. And without strong standards, the minimum you're willing to accept in key areas, without holding that line and fighting for it every day, well, then all of a sudden, we're going to get blown every which way. We're going to crack under the weight of expectation and responsibility. And so what we identified last night, my wife and I, was like, oh my goodness, we've neglected this standard. We've been accepting less than the standard in our home in these areas. And so we've recommitted. And so as you are going into your preseason, remember what your standards are. Clearly define your standards. And don't allow your focus on the branches, which are the systems in savvy coaching, your offensive and defensive systems, your player development systems, your shooting systems, your scouting systems, whatever. Don't allow your systems to grow until you've held your standards on how you do what you do. Mark, I actually love what you did at Bob Jones. I think you called it a reset drill, whereas if the standard wasn't held, you immediately reset it. You want to share a little bit about that or how you've used that?
Yeah. So basically, it goes a lot in line with what you're saying: is focus on the roots, focus on your standards. none of your systems, your X's and O's work unless your culture's right, right? So the whole, culture eats strategy for breakfast thing. So I think to never have a bad practice or to always put standards at the full forefront is you focus on behaviors. And
Mm.
we're going to coach your behaviors before we ever coach anything technical, tactical. And a system for doing that is what we call reset drills, or if you put these drills in sequence together, it could be called a quick set. So, a quick set of reset drills. And basically, you want to pick a drill or a couple of drills that your players know. We don't want them thinking about what to do in the drill. We want them focused on behavior. So you might set a behavior. A favorite of ours would be we have to sprint to the back of the line. So picture a pretty easy drill that you probably already do in your program. And the success criteria for the drill is we sprint to the back of the line. So 1 minute on the clock, anytime somebody does not sprint, the only feedback coaches can give is yelling reset. And what we're saying is reset the clock to 1 minute, that somebody went below standard. We don't say Tyler didn't sprint, reset. We just say reset. That way they have to have some self awareness like, man, I think that was me. But what it does, it's one, it makes it player led. Two, it focuses on behavior and not the technical tactical, but it also creates an environment where players start to give notifications and reminders. So, talking about systems, communication system, I think the easiest way that players communicate peer to peer is encouragement. Let's go, let's play hard, let's win. But we have to teach them how to go a little bit deeper than that. So that's a great way to get them to give each other notifications like, hey, you didn't sprint there, or reminders. So maybe while Tyler is getting his rep, as soon as it ends, I'm yelling sprint, sprint, sprint. So we have a really loud gym focused on behaviors, and it sets the tone for the rest of practice.
I mean, so good. And, coaches, I would just encourage you, put as much focus into planning your reset drills with the objectives of holding your standard. And I would encourage you that you would do this more often early in your season than you should have to late. And a lot of times, if you do the work early, you're going to reap the rewards later. Whereas so often early, we feel pressure. I got to get my press break in. I got to get my baseline inbounds in. And so you forsake these things, but they're going to crop up as pain points later on. Like dig your well before you're thirsty.
Yep.
Mark, what would be like a good indication for, let's say, your average high school coach? Um, like if you were planning a high school practice,
Sorry.
how much time or when in your practice plan, like, would you allot for a reset drill?
That's a great question. So, one, you want to pick a drill that if they fail a few times, you're okay with it continuing. It
Mm,
was for us, it was usually something that involved shooting. So, at the very least, I could be upset that our behaviors weren't right, but hey, we
mhm,
might get 3, 4 minutes of shooting here. Usually, when we had the reset, maybe 3 times, it would be a huddle. Hey guys, what's the
mhm,
success criteria? Maybe on this day it was communication, calling ball, calling name.
mhm.
Um, so just remind them of that and remind them to give each other notifications, reminders. That kind of gets, everybody refocused. So I would usually allot. Now we kind of changed to do just one drill, maybe two at the beginning. I think 5 minutes is good. But
Yeah,
I think what's even better is sprinkling those throughout practice. So if you want
yeah.
to simulate a halftime, or if you allow your players to call a timeout, or coming out of a break, if you wanted to start with a reset to get that energy level back up, and also having your reset drills basically be your pregame warm up. That
Yep.
way, your pregame warm up is behavior driven, and you develop a routine where your practice and game days are the same.
It's crazy. Like the more we meet and discuss, like it's pretty cool. Like how aligned so many of the things, but with like different language and like wonderful golden nuggets that you shared. And so, for our savvy coaches, directly in line with focus on your pre-practice being your pre-game. with the objective being establish the environment, establish the standards for both practices and games. Mark, what I love that you said that I have not emphasized in the past, but I would love to emphasize now for our coaches, is intentionally sprinkling them throughout practice. I think in the past for me, it's been more a feel thing, like, oh, we're below the standard, stop everything, and we're going back to what I call a prime reset. They'd be interchangeable, that we're priming our environment.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think knowing that these things do happen throughout practice, communication waivers, energy waivers, focus waivers, um, planning them ahead, I think is just a really powerful nugget. So coaches, you're going into your practice planning, I would add that in.
Yeah.
Uh, Mark, anything else to add on that one?
Yeah. So I would agree. Our I think our methods are very similar with different terminology.
Yeah.
One thing that you said that really stuck out with me is you do it based on feel of, hey, energy levels dipping. How can I intervene as a coach and shape the environment to where we get our energy level up without yelling, screaming, pleading, begging? Um, I think that's the art of coaching. Like I think that is a sign of a master coach, right? To have methods, systems that we can use to intervene in a way to get what we want, and almost just making it a non-negotiable. It's just this is going to happen or it's not, instead of pleading and pleading and pleading, which I often did early in my coaching career.
Yeah, I mean everyone, and like to tie it back to like our trees. So like this, we're talking systems now. These are the branches. This is what the fruit will grow from. Like have a system, a reset drill, a prime time. Have a system in place that will be supported by your standards, and then you'll start to see the fruit. And fruit are outcomes. Fruit are what we choose to measure. How do we define success? Because that which you measure, you will improve. If it matters, it should be measured. And so if this matters, if giving reminders matters to you, if focus matters to you, if mistake response matters to you, measure it. And measure it can be as simple as debriefing those things as a priority. Okay, after we've played, this focus scrimmage, hey, I just want everyone to do a self-assessment right now, where I'm like really good to mediocre to poor with your thumb. Just show me how was your how were your was your mistake response and body language that game. Let's just assess it. That's measurement. It's just putting attention to it. You don't have to have this elaborate whiteboard with 20 managers tracking everything. Just measure it because it will shine some attention. I've told the story of my daughter many times, but it bears repeating because I can tell it quickly. As part of our morning routine, my daughter Charlie, she's 8 years old now, we do push-ups. And for the longest time, she would just do 10 push-ups. And then a few months into it, I said, hey, let's start measuring this thing. So I got a whiteboard. We have a whiteboard out in our home, and I just put the number 10. She's like, oh, what's that? I'm like, well, that's how many push-ups you did, honey. So the next morning, she comes out, looks at the number 10, and I think we all know she did 11 because she saw it measured. And for the next 30 days, she was able to add one push up a day. So, for 3 months, she did 10 push ups. And all of a sudden, after 30 days, she's doing 40 push ups just because we measured it. She didn't get stronger, right? We didn't change our routines or our systems. We just added measurement. And so, if it's like spend more time, coaches, thinking of ways you can measure what matters as opposed to add to what matters. And I
I'll
think you'll get better. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. I was going to add one thing to that. So I
please.
love that the whole progressive overload and just the seeing it up there gave her the motivation to do it. Here's one thing I shared with a coach recently. He was asking about rebounding,
Mm,
and I think we're alike in the fact that we're going to be games based, right? And so we just kind of came up with the idea. I did this as a head coach. I wish I would have done it more, but we get warmed up, and let's say we go right into a 5-on-5 segment, and this is kind of a as long as. So we're gonna play 5-on-5 as long as we don't miss a block out. Once we miss a block out, we're moving on. And maybe day one we go 3 trips, or if we're doing it by time, it might be a minute and a half. Well, now we've got, hey, 90 seconds. We're trying to beat that tomorrow. We'll do the same thing. And maybe we can go 2 minutes the next day without missing a block out, or whatever it could be, shot selection, right? So it could be, how long can we go and only take nines and sevens, or what I would call a big advantage shot. So yeah, I love the idea. Very, very similar principle.
Yeah, that's really good. And we'll share this again at the end, but I was remiss. So if you want to find out more from Mark, check out Courtside Consulting. He works with coaches, does an amazing job. Yeah, one of the guys in the industry I respect a ton. So really appreciate you just adding value to the community right now. But that's where you can find Mark if you want more of the stuff. And even Coach Carr, you were posting in the chat about how you've been melding Mark's 5 out stuff with race and space transition stuff for the last 3 years. And I just saw that today when Mark was coming on. So really complimentary stuff. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more later. But that would be like the one. Um, Culture is not over here and your basketball over here. When you keep these two things separate, you'll fail at both. Like the whole goal and the vision of a tree is that it grows, right? And you don't get oranges from an apple tree. You don't get apples from an orange tree, right? It's just not going to happen. So you have to be firmly rooted, establish your standards, they're your systems, and then you're going to get the fruit. And it all must be aligned. It's not turn it on and off. And culture is not a workshop that you do once a week, and it's not a book that you've read. Um, it is the standards that you're willing to lose for because you care about them. So that's just my biggest reminder is we just get distracted by shiny things going into this season, coaches, and just wanted to give you that reminder. Mark, what would be one, and I'll share this as well, what would be one you think mistake you made throughout your coaching career in your preseason that you wish you could go back and do over or you would like other coaches to avoid?
Yeah. So, gosh, only one mistake.
Yeah,
That's
right.
hard. Uh, I would say, initially what came to mind when you were talking culture was mistake would be talk about culture, but not have systems for culture.
Yeah.
And then another one would be trying to do everything and working for the system. We all have these constraints based on our state association rules, gym space, multi sport athletes, whatever your variables are that you have to navigate. I would try to ignore all those things and just this is what I want to do. And we're going to do all of these things. Where I learned to get better was all right, this is what we can do. What can we cut deep in and gain a lot of traction in? For us in off season, preseason, it became shooting and conditioning, strength and conditioning. So if we were lifting, we were running, getting in basketball shape, and getting a bunch of shots up. I was happy. I knew there was a lot of stuff that we were trading off, but that was okay. I could put that stuff aside in the preseason.
Yeah. That's really good. I'm going through the litany in my head as well of mistakes, but I'm going to share maybe a little different one. I would say being too impatient. So, Mark and I come from a little bit different backgrounds as he has head coached teams. And for the last 15 years, I've run camps. And they are similar but different in that my entire season occurred over 5 days. And I had season after season after season after season, but we had to. I mean, we experienced most of the things you'll experience in a season in these packed 5 days, and I made most of my mistakes. Like I'll call our preseason like day one. I made most of my mistakes because I'm coming off of a camp of 160 high achieving athletes on day five, where we're having this emotional high where we've overcome adversity, we've bonded, and we've achieved success, right? And so we're like, man, that's my picture of this is who we are. And then I'd roll into day one and hate the group. Like what? Because I'm having this comparison mindset. Well, our championship team last year, or this best player that I've ever coached, and now I'm just like disappointed with the lack of energy, the lack of communication, the lack of buy-in. Now I want to get to day five. I want to get to the feeling, and I'm impatient, and so there's angst and anger, and I made poor decisions, and I took shortcuts to like try to artificially push out fruit as opposed to just patiently hold the standard, establish the system, and let the environment do its work and let it grow. And I feel like most of the mistakes I made were sourced from an impatience to see the fruit across the board, like good shot selection, effort on defense, execution of our defensive schemes. So I would say impatience would probably be mine.
Yeah, me as a leader coach can share in that. I was very impatient. Still probably am. I want to move and I want to go, go, go. I did. I went. I remember going in my center court circle before a practice, and I read five mistakes that leaders make. I printed an article out, and I'm sure my players were like, "Here we go again. He's going to hammer us on our poor leadership." And I just said, "Hey guys, what of these five do I do? Like, what
Mm.
mistakes do I make as a leader?" And powerful, but the feedback somebody just knocked on my door. So this is
Well, I love your patience right now. It's good. Way to exercise patience and demonstrate what we're talking about.
that's right. Anyway, I the feedback I got was that I need to be more patient or I'm too competitive. But I love your story of coming off the high of the end and then having to start over with a new group. Reminds me of something that I got a lot better at was be the coach your team needs you to be meet them
Mm.
where they're at. Um, that was a huge lesson to me to have really high standards but low expectations. I found when I would plan a practice or we'd go into a game, I would have this mental image of what it was going to look like. And when it fell short, that's where
Mm.
my impatience came in. So high standards, but low expectations, right? I don't have
Yeah.
any idea of what the practice is going to look like today, but I'm going to be the coach they need me to be when we get started.
And that's probably like the fourth tweetable thing that you've shared so far. High standards but low expectations. That's really good. I'm jotting it down. I think another reminder in line with that, and then we can move on, is, and this is a reminder for myself, and it leads to the impatience thing. I think this is why that resonates with me so much. Is Well, James Clear has a line that I adapted for coaches, and you've probably read a lot of James Clear, Atomic Habits, but he said this. He said like people tend to overestimate what they can get done in a day, and to underestimate what they can get done in a year. And for a coach, I think we tend to overestimate what we can get done in a practice, but underestimate what we can do over the course of a season. And if we can, like, when in doubt, zoom out, take that approach, I think it will speak to the impatience that we all feel, especially after having a bad practice or, not getting through your practice plan. Like, I would say just don't be so attached to the need to get through every minute of your practice plan. Just hold your standards, just establish your systems, and trust that you'll achieve over the course of the season.
Yep, agreed.
All right, cool. All right, let's. So that's our one. That's the main thing. And if that's the only thing you take away from this, I mean, you can sign off now and have gotten some absolute gold. All right, here's three quick hitters where we've been focusing on offense. And here's three quick hitters that where I'm seeing in film and in my conversations with a lot of our coaches and other coaches, I'm seeing people fall down. And I want to protect you from most of the falls that I'm able to help with. So I'm going to focus in on three quick hitters. Here's number one, first quick hitter. In our transition in race and space, only pass up the street for a nine. So I'm seeing a lot of coaches fall down on this because we're coming from this like traditional of like, oh, hit ahead pass. The pass is faster than the dribble. Pass the ball up the street quickly. But three drawbacks that I see in this are one, usually it's a better ball handler, decision maker, more dangerous player passing to a weaker one, and we give up an advantage there. Second, oftentimes we're passing to a player who isn't dangerous. They're trying to catch over their shoulder. They're, outside the 3-point line. They've got to make a dribble move to attack. We're passing to a less dangerous player. And lastly, a lot of times we haven't yet created the space at the rim that we want to by flattening out the defense in transition, by hitting our deep corners, by pulling someone out to the porch or short corner if you're playing that sort of scenario. So I would say beware of passing up the street. We only want to pass up the street for nines. And one trigger that you can give your rackers or your point guards on this is we want to only pass up the street inside the arc. We don't want to pass up the street outside the arc. And I'll do a quick screen share, and then and Mark, I welcome disagreement and conflict on all this stuff because I think that's how we get better. So I have no idea what you're going to say on any of this,
Okay.
and I'm excited to hear it as well. So a reminder for all of our race and space coaches: we got in the 7 second game, 7 second game, first 7 seconds of possession. When we're trying to get nines and sevens, the first 7 seconds, we got three zones, and we want to have an order of operation for each of these zones. Defensively, here at the bottom, from the top of the key to the baseline, this is the bolt zone. And we want to make sure, and this will be the second thing. I'll go through all three, Mark, and I'll ask you a question. The second thing is when players don't bolt and stay back and watch the outlet happen, that's the other place that coaches fall down. So if you don't have the ball in the bolt zone, you are bolting to your spots. Bolt zone here, get clear of it. From top of key to top of the key, that's a speed zone. We don't want anyone rubbernecking or looking back for the basketball in the speed zone. Your goal is to clear the speed zone as fast as you possibly can. And then from top of the key to the rim, that's the read zone. So that's when we're making a read. Did we get behind the defense? If so, become the rim runner. Are we not behind the defense? Go and lock down your spot to flatten out and space out the defense. Bolt, speed, and read. And here's the last thing. So let's say that, we're our own outlet and, our racker is able to actually, they're the only person that's actually looking to receive the ball in the speed zone. Let's say we do get the ball to our best player that can get to the rack and score at the rack. Well, now we've created space at the rim by flattening out the defense. We have dangerous, hopefully, shooters. So now we can go hunting nine first and sevens second. All right, here's the last thing that I will suggest. Make sure that you're dragging. If they can't get behind the defense, they actually slow down and get behind the basketball to give the racker the full space at the top of the key to either hunt down the lane or to cross the street with the basketball. And this is the last reminder. If your racker can't hunt, they must cross the street. And just in crossing the street in transition, we're going to shift the defense and allow for a bigger advantage catch. And like Mark likes to say, then we will not waste a closeout on that pitch back. So those would be my three reminders in transition. Mark, what's something either you disagree with on that or something you found success with in transition in the past?
Yeah, interesting. I remember seeing you present it, Bob Jones, talking about pass to dangerous players, not open players. We actually have done kind of the opposite. So I might not, and I wouldn't even say disagree, but up until this point, have that's been our teaching point was pass to first open player. The idea being you move the ball, you move the defense.
Mm-hmm.
We always set a kind of a benchmark of ball crossing half court in 4 seconds or less, and then paint touch or first action within the first 7 seconds, whatever comes earlier. So, only thing I would add that we've had a lot of success with is looking early opposite first. Just like you talked about crossing the street, get you that ball reversal, play to space. If we go early opposite, that gets you a ball reversal. It makes transition defense flip their hips, turn their head, slows them down a little bit. But very, very similar. We usually run the two-sided break. So we're looking early opposite, up the side, cross the street. But one thing that we've had a lot of success with, where you're talking about the dragon staying behind, same idea with us. We play with a two-guard front. So we would play tandem. They'd be a little bit behind, but almost in line. Um, and we would go over and then down, if that makes sense. So,
Well, could
um,
you like? I'm fascinated by both. Could you screen share and like diagram that, or do you want me to screen share and you talk through it, or because I'm having trouble picturing it, so I'm sure that our coaches are as well.
yeah, I think I can screen. Are you seeing my screen here?
You're live.
All right, perfect. So let's say in this scenario, we've got 3 and 5 as our paired side or two-side break. We would want two looking early opposite, then up the side. If we can't get that, one is staying in tandem. But what we get a lot is if this early opposite pass isn't available for two, a lot of times we will go instead of crossing the street with the dribble, we'll do it with the pass and we will pass to one. And then one has an opportunity to hit five a lot of times for us, which is
Mm.
more of an over and down concept.
Yeah.
Um,
Over and down. Gotcha.
Yep. And but one thing that we've had a lot of success with as well is just having our and you do too based on your diagrams is our full court alignment match our half court alignment, and that allows us to seamlessly flow into our half court attack. This is the alignment. That would be a weird alignment, wouldn't it? This is our alignment that we use a lot in our 5 out driving space. So what's been good for us is what we call early Rose, because our kind of our triggers earlier, what we call Rose series, named after Derrick Rose. We will go across here at right before the 3 point line and enter right in the offense, so we're seamlessly flowing. One mistake that I see a lot of teams do is dribble across into the defense. Now we're fighting pressure and trying to. Now offense basically becomes complete a pass instead of try to score. So that's one thing that we've been successful with is just starting offense the length of the floor. I think if we remove this half court line, we would
Mm-hmm.
probably start running offense somewhere right here anyway sometimes. So
Yes.
I'm not aware of a rule that makes you cross half court before you start running offense.
Yeah. Okay. This is good. So can you go back to the uh, early, so the quick ball reversal back to one and up to the five. So just for a little interpretation, so for our savvy coaches, this would be in line with our press break options. So like same thing, like we want to flow like water, take the path of least resistance. If it's hard, we don't want it. So that's what we call flow game. And so at any point, if you're a racker or ball handler, whatever, if it's not an easy hunt, if there's resistance, well, then we want to flank and try to go other side. So this is get off the ball, swing through dragon, hit up. That would be an example of what we're calling our wide spot right there. But or if it's just your lock in the corner, they're flashing back. So maybe Mark, if you can throw that again, but that's how you flow right into relieving any sort of pressure in race and space.
Yeah. Very similar to what we teach too against press break. We no matter what our alignment is, we talk about going 2 out, which I think is the same concept that you're talking about. So
Yeah.
against any pressure, you obviously want middle, side, over the top, and then our safety behind. Anytime we throw it back, so if two passes to one, five's coming back on a string, and we want this to be an immediate 2 out, meaning first pass out goes from 2 to 1. The second pass out is our 2 out pass. This is where the space is going to be against pressure. So I think we're talking
Mm.
kind of similar. Again,
Yeah.
similar concepts, different terminology, right?
Always. And coaches, you've heard me say this before, there's no absolutes or few absolutes in basketball, so I don't contradict myself. There's few absolutes in basketball, and there's so many ways to be successful. Like establish your principles. And gosh, I'm going to do this as well. So we were actually training this last night. So I did both player workouts and team practice last night for our club team. And we're working on handling pressure specifically. And so we just did a 2v1 drill just to handle pressure. We did 2v1 plus drill just on handling pressure. And this might be one you want to use in your preseason workouts. Maybe it's not one, your choice, but here's how we did it. So a 2v1 plus. So our plus was a restricted defender that had to stay in the smile or stay in the charge circle. Okay. They could only defend the charge circle. Offense, when we have the basketball, we're on offense. We don't do anything different. We're hunting nines first and sevens second. We must hunt a nine before we pull a seven. So we would just engage like this. This guided defender C would just indicate whether or not the ball is going to hunt right or left. So let's say that they hunt left. And as the ball hunts, C's applying all out pressure. So from a skill development standpoint, we actually, instead of trying to attack pressure, we actually want to create space on pressure. So they were working on pullbacks and vision. So as soon as they got space, the ball's picked up so you can make a pass. Most young players can't make good passes off the dribble against pressure, so they're going into their pullback and protection plan. As soon as this pressure is applied, we're now working on finding windows. So, if pressure's here, we're finding a window here. If pressure for some reason was here, they're finding a window there. They have the whole court, they're finding windows. Now, here's how we did our 2 out of it because, again, we don't want this pass once we found a window just to turn into an immediate dribble. That player doesn't have vision. They tend to make poor decisions. We want to try to get 2 outs off pressure, just like if we get stopped on dribble penetration to the rim. We want to try to get a 2 out or what I call a click click off of it. So, what we were doing now is when that pass came, that's 1 out. And I wanted this player to immediately burn and we get it pass right back, and that would be our 2 out. And so now we're hunting nines. This player is now locked, and this player's hunting a seven. And so we would just rotate through that. We'd have, teams of two that would just be flowing through out of their lines. We would keep the defense on defense for X amount of reps before we gamified it. And that was just our 2-on-2 pressure release so that they can get a more unstructured approach to doing exactly what Mark just shared.
Yeah, I love that. One analogy I love that your language of, and correct me if I get this wrong, not attacking pressure but creating space versus
Hmm.
pressure. Yeah. So I've told our players it's when you're facing pressure, it's not a race because often they want you to speed up. It's a game of tag and deception. So
That's
change
good.
speed, direction, alleviate pressure that way. I love it. And then another thing that you said, basically, we do a very similar drill where we'll have three offensive players against four defenders. And those four defenders are obviously at an advantage. So they are just trapping, rotating, and to teach players where to move, how to give support to the ball, opportunities for two outs or clicks. So that's been a really good one where, especially early in your season where you might not have your press break in, I think that's the difference between coaching and teaching. Like coaching, we can show them a press break, but can we actually teach them how to beat pressure instead of just here's the press break, figure it out.
Yeah, so good. And Mark, you'll notice that sometimes I might offend some coaches, but I'm okay with it because it comes from a place of like I want to offend you into change. So this might be offensive to some coaches, but understand the heart of it and not just the procedure of it. If you're obsessed with a press break, you probably need to grow as a teacher. And again, there's vocabulary in there. Like I understand, like yeah, we got to give them protection plans. We got to protect our players against pressure for sure and early, because I mean, at the lowest levels of play, the most aggressive team wins, right? And then as you get to a little bit higher levels of play, the more skilled team wins. And then you get to the highest levels of play, the smartest team wins, right? And so like to protect your players, like early in player development, like I've got a group of 11 and under girls, my daughter's team that we were working last night. If they get pressed, they lose. Period. And
Yep.
so like it's one of the first things that we need to teach players, and I believe that, but I'm learning it at a whole new level when my daughters are crying on the bench, right? So like you're like, oh, I feel your pain, right? So when you're doing youth development coaches, like that's the first thing you should do. But the answer to the question of can you handle pressure is not a press break. The answer to the question is have you developed the skill set? Because players can only make reads based on the tools that they have. And if they don't have a tool, there's no way that they can make the read. And so, like, the skill set informs what reads you can make. And so, instead of teaching a press break, you want to teach principles to handle pressure, and that'll travel even beyond us as a coach. So, yeah, I love what you said there, and I just wanted to like hammer it home for coaches because so many coaches are saying, "When do we put in my press break? When do you put?" Well, if your offense isn't your press break, re-examine your offense. This is how we play against pressure: full court, half court, man zone, whatever. So I think that was really good. You might have something to riff on that one.
Yeah, no, a lot of the same. Especially like I said early on, you don't even have to have a press break in, right? There are a lot of coaches will ask me, "Hey, what's the press break against this press?" And it's like, "Hey, get your players in the right spots and teach them how to play against pressure." That
Yeah.
is the press break.
Yeah, and I think one way you can train it is, and Mark gave an example of it, but I'd flip it on both sides. When learning, give a significant advantage or disadvantage. So Kevin Krieger, one of our coaches in Indiana, just sent me over some film, which I'll get to a little bit later, where they were putting in some of their zone actions, and so he put it all in 5-0 V4D. Give an advantage so we have some success, big space, big advantages, so that players believe and they can see the reads quicker. And vice versa, right? If you're putting in pressure or your own pressure, give your D an advantage early. Let them just crush it, and they'll believe it. And then you can start to kind of get them more in the pocket. So I think giving advantage early when you're teaching things is really helpful. And then you can raise the level of adversity so that they're disadvantaged later on. But I would encourage considering that as a progression
Yeah, I think
across the board.
idea. No, sorry, Tyler. I think
Go ahead.
idea
Yeah.
there is skill level and challenge level have to be right on point, right? If skill level is too high than challenge, then we're going to get unengaged. If challenge If the challenge of the drill or the game is too difficult for our skill level, then we lose all confidence and it's not fulfilling or enjoyment or fun.
Hmm.
So yeah, just tweaking constraints, advantages, modifying games to where we can get skill level and challenge to match.
Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna transition now to the one of our 1-3-1. We'll give you three ideas and more than that actually about ways to juice up both your offense and your defense. We tried to go offense, but here's the one. And we're gonna finish with this one. It's probably the most common question that I've been getting. I'm really excited to hear you share on this, Mark. And then I'll share some tweaks that I think I've made similar but a little bit independent. But most of our coaches have not heard my tweaks because it's a recent change to our race and space half court shape or spacing. How would you flow? And you kind of already alluded to it, but maybe it would help all of us. How would you flow from your transition into your five out? Based on where they are on the floor, or like, are they running to a side or relative to the ball? What's their relationships to get into your five out spacing?
Yeah, so in transition, we just compete for lanes. Don't run a numbered break. It is, we ask our players not to change sides of the floor, so we identify roles, rackers and runners. Our rackers are responsible for inbounding the ball on a make or sweeping through. We allow the closest racker to inbound. The other one is becomes
Do
our
you
out.
use racker a term that you've used?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
cool. I didn't know
yeah.
that.
We use that at App State actually.
Cool.
And then if you're not a racker, you're a runner. So I'm just, you say simplicity wins. Hard to argue with that, right? High clarity equals high performance. So
Hmm.
it's very binary. I'm a racker or a runner. If I'm not a racker, I'm running. I'm hitting the nearest sideline. And what I love about the two-sided break in a five out version, you can't screw it up because if you are the third player to the sideline, you just become the two side trail. So
Hmm.
that allows us we're already forming our shape and our alignment as we arrive, spaced and organized. And that is, you mentioned watching film. That's the number one thing. We call it drive in space. You say race in space. So the very first thing is we're establishing pace, but if we're not well spaced, we can't run a race in space or drive in space offense, right? So that's one of the big blocks. So
Hmm.
arriving organized in our alignment allows us to go guard to guard. And like I said earlier, that is our Rose series. That's really where all of our triggers come from at the base level or layer of the offense. So that allows us to go action spot to action spot. And now we afford our players, they have usually two affordances there, or options kind of A, B. Where I don't care if they go A or B, we can play off of that, and then we'll just seamlessly flow in the offense there.
I like it. Okay, give me feedback on this. So what I've been calling a wide spot. Um, actually, would you? I'll share my screen, and then you can give me feedback on it. So what
Okay.
I've been calling a wide spot, and I'll tell you my intent on this, and I really like what we've had so far. Let me pull this up. There we go. All right, so if we have our blue here on offense, I've actually been having our wide, we'll call it the P, the wide spot. Because I agree, I like keeping a two guard front in five out. I like keeping two guard front against all zones as well, and just kind of spacing it. But instead of our wide, or what you've been calling a stretch, being more at the 45, do I have that right? That's kind of where you've put it, where the P
Yeah.
is?
And even more to the sideline, so directly, yep, right there.
Okay, cool. So here's what I've been doing. This, I've been putting the wide spot here. So basically taking what I call the porch or the short corner, where we just want to like create space, getting our heels on the baseline. I want them to go heels sideline, but in line with what I've been calling attack spots, you call action spots. And the intent is, especially if they're in man, I find that their defender, when they're this high, tends to come instead of maybe being in like a help situation, even a pack line, they just tend to take two more steps out. And I always want this player to get opposite the ball. So same way that our porch would work opposite the ball in a 4-out 1-in, we're trying to always work opposite the ball right here, which then turns us into, okay, we're going to get our gaps and our actions. And I've also found that this like really works well into our 11-second game. So give me some feedback on that. Have you ever seen that? Do you think that's crazy? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I've never seen that, so
Okay.
but I wouldn't call it crazy. I like it. So I would want a question I would ask is how do you flow from here? So what actions can you get with almost a three guard front here?
Yeah. So our fill stuff would be the same. So, let's say that we get a lane line drive, and so we're a lock unlock lift, and obviously a pull behind on that situation. So in this situation, they would go from wide right to attack, and from our money spot or our corner spot up to wide. Obviously we get this kick, and we call this an exit cut, bang. And so like that's our normal like drive space flow. Now, as far as actions, one of my like last night actually, um, we were playing a team last night with our eighth and ninth grade group, and they played some man, more pack line-ish man, and they played a bunch of 2-3 zone, and we went wide spot spacing like 90% of the time against both. And I mean, our ghost screen action against both worked amazing. So like, let's say that we're just coming down here, we don't have anything. Our 7-second game, we go 11-second game, and it's just a pass right into our ghost screen. It generates the same movement off of just a straight lane line attack, right? But we'll get into it that way. Another one that I really like out of this is like a split action. So just right out of it, we're just going double pin here. And as the racker's coming off up here into the tack spot, these two players are splitting. One's going to put pressure on the rim, one's going to space, right? We don't get it, fill, and flow. So I've just found it gives us more space on one side of the floor just by even getting this help defender maybe from here to here a little bit more. So anyway, that's what we've been. And I generally put a player in the wide spot too for the same reasons I put someone on the porch. Not as skilled with the basketball in their hands, but I'll put a wide spot if they're small. So they're not really going to give us much on the offensive boards. They're not going to catch and finish around the rim on drives. But they might be a little bit better catch and shoot player than they are a catch and finish player, but we don't want to put the ball on the deck. So then I'll just put them in a wide spot, and at least they can just be a click or 2 out hub or a catch and shoot player for us there, and they'll draw their defender away from the rim.
Cool.
Yeah,
Let me share my screen here.
yeah,
I'll talk a little bit about how we used the stretch spot or the
yeah.
45 spot, and it might give you some ideas.
Love it.
Yeah, so we have very, very similar. It's funny how similar all this stuff is. We took the dunker spot and we became positionless. And I actually had a 6-7. We really this year that we made the move to 5 out driving space. Our starting lineup was 6-7, 6-5, 6-5, 6-3, 6-1. But we didn't have a post player. And even when we did have post players, I found that maybe our post player wasn't in our best five, but he was our best post. So we were starting our
Mm,
four best players and maybe our seventh or eighth best player.
right.
So this was, a way to get our best five on the floor. And I didn't have to tell my 6-7 guy, hey, look, you're not a post player, but I need you to take one for the team, right? It's necessity's the mother of invention. It was my job to come up with a system that we could all play in, right? So
Mm,
um, we use this stretch spot. We play really high and wide, basically same idea as the wide spot, right? But
mm,
and I would just tell this player you're equidistant between, you're in the middle between 3 and 1. So if
mm,
one was here, you're gonna obviously just move in relation to your teammates. One thing that I've liked about having our 45 or our stretch spot on the floor is one of our principles of play is we pass through single gaps and we drive through double and triple gaps. So all of our cuts are designed to create space. So if two goes to one, we talked about them having an A B option. Option A that we put in almost every year would be this 45 cut or what we call fingers. And what that creates is a triple gap for one or a single gap for one to pass through. So
mm,
now when you pass 2 to 1, now player one's got an A or B. I can drive through big gap or pass through small gap. where a player like you were describing doesn't put on the deck very much, smaller guy, not going to finish well at the rim.
Hmm.
Maybe he passes and now we could cut away or we could drift. So now he's got an AB option. Either way, we're creating space for player five. So I
Yeah, great.
like what we've stumbled upon as far as every cut creates a big gap to drive through and a small gap to pass through.
Yeah, I haven't heard that articulation before, and I like it. And my mind goes to this question: how do you train it? Like, what would be like the simplest way to train the read of small gap pass? Like, yeah, how do you go about that?
Yeah. So good question. So again, we're talking early in practice. Let's play 4-on-4, 5-on-5, and the constraint is you can pass through single gaps, drive through double or triple gaps. So
Mm. And then
let's
would
just
it be
make
like a turnover if you violate the constraint, or it's just no bucket?
either.
Okay.
So based on the day, right? So maybe early, let's say practice 1, 2, 3. It could just be as the head coach, that's going to be my cue to stop and recreate. So
Hmm.
someone drove through a single gap when they could have chose the bigger gap. Stop, Tyler. If you could do that over again, what would you do differently? Drive to my right instead of my left. Okay,
Yeah.
go. Um, and but then as we get progressive consequences would be, oh, we drove through single gap, turnover.
Hmm.
So that would be an easy way. And then what we would do is I'll go back to sharing my screen here
Yeah.
and do this quickly. We have taught through script to live or read to live. So basically, we would go, if I wanted my players to swing more through the single gap, then we would just start 1 to 2, 2 to 5. And then we're live. That's the script, is the swing. And then we would play read to live, where we would just let two read, maybe based on how the defense is playing, maybe based on his or her skill set, whether they swing or drive. And I would tell them, let's try to be 50-50 the number of times that we pass through single gap and drive through big gap. And then some games we could play would be just ping pong, where we're continuously playing up and down, or we have a really fun transition game that we call conversion. And I might just tell them success criteria. We could turn the ball over. We might take some fives or some small advantage
Hmm.
shots. The only thing we're evaluating is, are we 50-50 driving big gaps and passing through small gaps? Real fast, a question I get a lot is, how do you get your teams to swing the ball so freely? I think the way you pass the ball is a direct reflection of your culture. So, do they trust that the ball is going to come back to
Yeah.
them? I think, like, just to bring it full circle, where we talked about the roots and culture. If the culture's right, your team's probably more willing to swing the ball in the half court too.
Yeah. Coaches, I hope you're feeling like I'm feeling right now, which is you're evaluating your entire team and how they play by the roots. Like I'm just like, okay, gosh, we don't. I'm the head coach of this youth club team that my daughters play on, and I'm not happy with how quickly we move the basketball. And okay, now I'm like, I just said it. That's a reflection of our roots. What do I need to weed out? What do I need to dig up? What do I need to water and plant? And so I hope you're all feeling that too. So I appreciate you asking that question and raising that, Mark. That's really good. Okay, this has been excellent, Mark. Like the amount of just golden nuggets that you've dropped and added value to our coaching community has been unbelievable. It's been good for me to learn as well. Maybe you can just finish up by sharing, if people want to connect with you more, where can they go to find you?
Yeah. First, thank you for sharing too, because you added a lot of value to me and everybody I can share this with. But if you want to learn more about Courtside, or work or connect with me, courtside-consulting.com, or you can find me social media platforms at Coach Cascio. Mostly active on Twitter, but I'm across all the platforms. Would love to connect with you. Please reach out if you have any questions or comments.
Awesome. And it's always been my vision coaches that I didn't want to teach an exclusive anything. I wanted to ask questions and provide concepts that can allow you to create your own tree, to know what fruit you want. And I love it when I stumble across other great teachers in the game, like Mark, like Mike Neighbors, like Doug Novak, like so many coaches that I learned from, like my friend TJ Rosine, like so that you can identify what you believe and feel comfortable with. And we usually start out on our journey by walking in the footsteps of people that we respect. But all of us will likely get to a point where we step out onto like sand that has no footsteps. And that's when it becomes really fun. And so I hope that this conversation, and I hope that, Savvy and Courtside and whatever other resources you get are pushing you out on your own path as opposed to like holding you in to our own. So that's always been my dream and vision. And I think that's why we resonate so much, Mark, is I believe that about you as well.
Yeah, very well said. I kind of use a much simpler analogy, but most coaches come to probably you too, but so I'll say us for what we do, but I try to encourage coaches to think more of why you do what you
Mm,
do and how you do what you do. So much more important than the what you do, but like you said, stepping out on your own and into your journey, that's what we both have kind of done, and like you
mm.
said, it's been fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. Mark, big thanks to you. Hit me up with questions in the community. I'll do a little film breakdown later and post that one separately, but I'm going to be respectful of Mark's time. Reach out to Mark at Courtside Consulting or hit him up on any of his social media platforms. Until next time, stay savvy.
Thanks.